Freddie Seba, Program Director, Tech Entrepreneur, School of Nursing and Health Professions. Freddie is a dynamic and versatile serial entrepreneur, co-founder, corporate innovator, and educator, deeply immersed in the fintech, digital health, and higher ed ecosystems. Freddie.
Thank you, John. All right. So thank you. Welcome, everybody. It's been amazing and I had the privilege to be here last week when the focus was on students. So I'm pretty privileged to be here. And my presentation is focused to faculty, us. So hopefully we heard really loud and clear. And the research shows, as you know, students are embracing this. So we need to somehow get comfortable. So this presentation is about my journey with GenAI. So I'm going to give you some context of how I've been informing it, how I'm interrogating that, and of course, given my pretty complex positionality, which I'm going to briefly explain. So here is some of the context that we're going to touch, and I'm happy to share some of that research with you. So again, this is me. I am a student here at the doctorate in School of Education, and I'm a faculty. So I need to navigate, and I'm a Silicon Valley entrepreneur. So I need to navigate these complex things, especially with technology, which, you know, I love. So privileged to be here. I've been teaching here for 7 years. I taught 5 years overseas. So I've been around. I love what I do here. And to the extent that we get what Chris said we're going to get paid for things we love. I think I got here. So I love what I do. So I'm pretty privileged. These are some of the classes that I've taught here. And I'm teaching in the fall a GenAI ethics class in the School of Nursing. So hopefully some of this research is going to inform that decision. More disclosures. I did use ChatGPT to curate this, full disclosure. I'm proud of it. This is, again, some of my involvement. I am active in the ecosystem in Silicon Valley. We all live here in the bubble. So we do need to help, or in my case, I think I need to help all this younger generation with their startups. And I had a pretty good run myself, so happy to be involved in different boards and what have you. So I'm not only somebody who teaches, but also somebody who practices what I say. And this is all my academia involvement here, which involves some of the things we're doing. Very privileged, again, to be here. Just to setting up, this is about my journey on GenAI and AI in general, which I started 10 years ago, over 10 years ago in the healthcare space with ovarian cancer, and there is no very clear and concise path. How do a woman who basically gets struck with that navigates that disease? So good news, GenAI, back then it was not called GenAI, the old TensorFlows and training was used to that. So I've been doing that for a while. So part of the expectations here is we are trying to think about how to use AI. Again, we saw the panel here, and I see it on my students. I use it on my classes the moment that I got excited myself and say, you guys need to get on board right away because you won't be able to get jobs. And as an educator who is privileged to come from tech and private industry, I know my responsibility is to help them navigate that. And because they're going to be competing with a lot of smart people coming from all kinds of schools for jobs. And this is a key piece. But of course, we want to align it with our principles and values. So cura personalis is something pretty big. And again, this is focused on faculty, on us. So I'm moving and staff. So when I started talking about this, most people say, oh, this is a fad, this is blockchain again, this is, all kind of things. And living here, we know how it is, right? We get excited, VCs get excited, everybody's pitching that, and suddenly, boop, what happened? Bitcoin went down and came up. So this is, I found this statistic amazing. I mean, some of these brands, I don't know you, I love Netflix. So this is part of my life. I don't know how I could survive with my daughter going through COVID without Netflix. But look at the number of days that it took for them to get what ChatGPT did in days. So this thing is here to stay. Amazing enough, they're talking about 180 million users. Amazing enough, look, only 12% are in the US. So this is something that the rest of the world is using it today. So humble opinion, this thing is here, and some of the previous panel agree with that. So we gotta figure out how do we get about doing this. So, in my interrogation is, okay, what are people using it for? And somebody in the back asked a good question, do you use this outside the school? So I found this statistic out there that says, well, if we get stuck with our computers or our phones, it seems like most of us are going to ChatGPT and say, okay, how do I get, because we don't want to be on the phone waiting 1 hour for somebody to do. But content creation is a big piece. And we saw some of the use cases. Professional, personal, we see it in healthcare with answering emails, which I don't know if you knew or not, but it takes 2.5 minutes for a doctor or a clinician to answer an email. They get burned out. So now there's massive deployment. I'm going to talk more about it. How do you get into electronic medical records in your email so you can help that physician, that clinician, to lower from 2.5 minutes to maybe half a minute? That doesn't mean the machine is going to answer, but that means you're going to help you enhance you. So this is the way it's worked. This is how we see it in healthcare. So basically, 40% of patients, and some of those are here in this room, we believe this thing is going to help us. Well, granted, 60% do not believe it yet. And these are some of the uses, and we talked about, to the extent that I want to use GenAI to put it on a Da Vinci machine that is going to operate on me, no way. But to the extent that I want that to help when nurses, I don't know, last time you stay with a loved one in a hospital, to shift at 2 a.m., 4 a.m., a crew comes, they go through a list, they do a hangover. So there's so much going on that is mostly paper. So can I get ChatGPT to help safely with little things? Can I help with discharges? And I was lucky enough to work with a startup here in Silicon Valley that was doing just that with people with type 2 diabetes. I mean, you go to the hospital, suddenly you get slammed. Hey, you have diabetes the rest of your life. This is what you need to do. And they give you a printout that was photocopied. I don't know if that ever happened to, it happens to all the chronic diseases. I need help. So this company did that with GenAI so they can have a coach that would basically help you navigate. So full disclosure, I say, okay, so how can I summarize what the issues are? Well, ask the culprit. So I went to ChatGPT and say, what are the issues that people are the most concerned? And of course, bias, misinformation, privacy manipulation, dependency, and what have you. So this stuff that we know we are aware. So I said, what is missing in this equation? Being somebody who works here at USF. Well, how about power concentration? How about all the monopolies? How about, a handful of companies in the world that keeps getting more power that we see is not helping us on the social context? So, not perfect, but kind of things that we want to think about. So from that is, how do I go about informing my teaching? And I say, well, there's no legislation. Everybody's trying to figure it out, which is the good news. Unfortunately, industry is ahead of us as education. In the past, technologies would come from places like this, or now it's industry. And unfortunately, they're going really fast. And regulation is trying to get caught up in the rest of society. So I took a look at a bunch of guidelines and to figure out how can we as faculty understand what are the main concerns. So I looked at, the White House blueprint for AI. I looked at the European Union, which is pretty good in data privacy. We're one of the few places where you own your data. Surprise, surprise. Go to a hospital here. Who owns that data? The hospital most likely is going to tell you they do, not us. So in some things, the EU is ahead of us on privacy. And again, went to look at what the governor is saying here in California as we live here, and looked in healthcare and briefly in education. How can that inform? So the good news is there, hopefully by the third slide, we're going to be able to see trends here. So there's a lot about human at the center. And we had a panel who did an awesome job talking about that. Biases, regulation, this is not law yet, but this is informing how a lot of the institution that touches our lives gonna go about it. I talked about European regulation, which again, they go pretty smart. I mean, the good news is their privacy, and here in the US, we have HIPAA compliance, we have FERPA, they have a single massive regulation that helps them not only in the financial services side, but also in healthcare and education, which makes it easier because they have a body there to do it. But the way they do it, and I don't know how much you can see there, is say, well, things are going well, but let's figure out risk. So again, going back to my example, do I want to use GenAI to do surgery, to do colonoscopy? The answer is no. But can we use it in little things to help inform diet and process and discharges? That's what the industry is doing that. So they kind of put in a good framework. And for us as faculty, we need to think about, okay, what does that mean? What should I be using it? Things that are less risky. Because you heard the students, they're using it. They're ahead of us. They're very excited about it. So using tools, there's no technology there that is going to catch that, I think, humbly. China, the other giant in the fight. So you have the EU, you have the US, and you have China, which putting massive amount of money in. Most of the large tech companies are very invested in this piece. And again, I guess advantages of their system is they're saying, this is what we're doing, and there is enforcement. So, and there is a race that they are committed to win. So they put a lot of things on tagging data, pretty interesting, which we haven't seen anywhere. So can I tag the data? We talk about biases because, if we live in a world that is less than perfect, where there is a lot of all these evils that we in this organization, this institution trying to fight, can I put some frameworks around tagging? So interesting approach again, which as an educator, we need to reflect on it. A lot of good things, user protection, complaint, believing things are gonna break. How can we get feedback on that? Contracting, they're saying, look, you the developer, whoever develops this is in the hook. Going back to the analogy of the self-service driving car, whose fault is it? Is it me, the one who paid? Well, they're saying you, developer, you are the one who are going to be in the hook. So bringing it back closer to home, there is this ordinance which again informs some of the things that we should be thinking about it as an institution now, which is basically creating responsibility, accountability, putting names, people who need to be there, need to get involved, being able to get everybody within the process. And again, this is important because they're tying it to, similar to China, I should compare that, with procurement. They're saying, if you do not do that, we are not going to buy services from you. So carrots and sticks. So things that we need to think about it to the extent that we cannot control it, we got to make sure that people who are deploying it, who have the most control, are accountable for this. And again, pretty interesting reading about, where the responsibilities are. They don't claim they have the solutions. They're saying, we need to be on top of it. We cannot stop it. We got to figure out with the tools we have, how are we going to impact behavior? Bringing it closer back to home. Love this piece because, again, as a faculty, we see encouragement here. Emphasize human in the loop, which we've been talking about it. We want to make sure that in tough decisions, and Chris had a good point on, do you want to send a rocket? Do you want to put AI on machines that kill human beings? Well, that's a tough one, going back to the European model. So again, align AI models with shared vision for education. For here as an institution, we have strong values. We gotta align ourselves with those when we make decisions. Again, involve educators, and we're gonna see the case of the healthcare with saying, bring the clinicians on board, make sure that people who are gonna use these are part of the design, which here in Silicon Valley, changing my hat, we make that mistake. We build stuff, yeah, this is cool, and then we see where can we throw it, and oh, by the way, we should have talked to faculty. Oh, we should have talked to our users. So here they're saying, look, get the educators involved from the beginning, which is an opportunity for all of us here. Because 5 years from now, this is going to be normal. But now it's the moment where we can get involved. And again, going back to my little corner in the School of Nursing, these guys did an amazing job. And again, these are decisions that have a lot of harm short term. Education, we don't see the outcome until a few years on the road. In healthcare, you do see the decision. So here again, protect autonomy, promote human well-being, foster responsibility and accountability. Now you can see how the patterns start emerging, ensure inclusiveness, equity. Again, not technology for the sake of it, but human-centered. This is a fascinating chart which can be applied to any industry, and it read as a product requirement document checklist that you do when you build the product here. I do like this little box here, which basically everything around transparent use of data, which we have no clue in this country. Who owns our data? Everybody's selling it. Nobody's sending me a check. I don't know if you guys get a check in the mail. I don't. And my data is being used and reused and resell and whatever. So there is a lot about that. And again, human rights, identifying requirements. Again, ask people like us in the room, how do we build this system? Privacy, very big, safeguarding, again, anonymity, what have you. So this is me in a little picture in Boston a few weeks ago, working on the American Medical Informatics Association. We're trying to figure it out, and these are clinicians, and some of these systems are deploying GenAI already. Going back, not in surgeries, not in colonoscopies, but in clinical trials is there, in answering emails, in discharges. So you see deployments, and it's fascinating. And some of the things that we came out with, I was very privileged to be part of that group, is, again, transparency, be able to see upstream and downstream consequences. For us, again, in education, it's harder because we're not going to see the outcomes until our students get into the marketplace. For some of us teaching in the master's, it's easier. We have a year, 2 years, and we know, assuming they get a good job, well-paid job, and they're thriving as professionals, we've done our job. But for a 4-year degree, it's going to be really hard, but we got to get there. And again, here, get involved the people who are in the front line, like all of us in this room. I'm almost done. So challenges, tons. I could have put like 10 slides on it. And opportunity, tons that we could do it. So again, I think we heard it from the student. The research is out there. I just got a research this morning that said, yep, and I don't want to paraphrase what they say, but students are very enthusiastic about this technology. 80% of them, according to some of the studies, do it. So this is my journey. Again, for those of us, these are some of the readings that have informed my journey. It goes from co-intelligence, goes to some of them are free, actually. Reid Hoffman, the guy who basically, we know who he is. And there's stuff with equity and inclusion, which is how this technology affects human. And of course, reading on two books that I really like is Range. Those of you who haven't read it, highly recommended, especially in the context of GenAI, which is how knowledge now gets around and is different than what we went to school. In Coders, which is understanding the people who are programming these things. And I know some of you are smiling. And it's a whole different tribe, which we need to understand because they are the one, 5 of them in a little room are creating, the Facebooks and the Googles and what have you. So we need to understand how they think, how they work, because they are the ones who are going to help us scale. So again, and I think hopefully we have time. So hopefully this is my journey, my humble journey. I've been in AI for many, many years. I've been a chief compliance officer for a couple startups here. And it's one of those few positions where they can take you to jail, which is, I didn't know until I signed up. And it's like, oh my God, how do I do with that? So this is serious stuff. And hopefully the startups that I'm involved, I'm trying to make sure that they design tools that are ethically aligned, that we think about, doing good, because it's our opportunity to do that, and we could do it at scale, which is the beauty of all this technology. And as the panel mentioned, you don't need to be a computer science anymore. Sorry, Chris. Anybody now can do it because the technology is out there. So I'm going to pause and open it up for questions. And I know I speak very fast. I got 3 coffees. Yes.
I did a great job of incorporating things the students have told us. And I agree that I don't want a GenAI robot surgeon doing my colonoscopy, but the pathologist who's going to look at the results of that colonoscopy could use AI to assist in their analysis, and in certain things they are actually better than the human pathologists who do it. At what point is a pathologist going to, I want to use the word negligent, but less than doing their patients an injustice by not using an AI tool? And how do we decide that, since those sorts of things are done in the background, most patients are never aware of it?
So great question, and I'm going to expand it a little more. So we are very proud here. We work with USF oncology department. Our students here do internships and do projects with them. So we're very happy. One of the issues that we see is the whole thing about, do we use AI, and are we going to also get rid of some of these individuals the pathologists who used to read these x-rays, and how's that going to affect? So, and can we go after them if they're not using it? So what we see is the following. We believe, and it's proven, that this technology is getting better results. This technology, some institutions used to outsource some of this outside the US. So most of your staff might end up somewhere, and somebody there in a basement used to look at it and providing that. So hopefully we're moving away from that. This technology is going to allow those individuals who were in the back spending all the time reading all of those charts to come out of there, to let the technology, based on the human in the loop, i.e. I'm going to get the machine to do the legwork, and I'm going to look at it, and I'm going to get out of my room and talk to the family and help the family understand what is it that the machine saw and what's my take on it. So good news, you have, with your question, a good example of how the technology works. B, chances of something going wrong are pretty small given where we are. We have an enhanced clinician that is coming out of the room, you have benefit for the hospital, you have benefit for the patient, you have benefit. So it's kind of a win-win. And I'm sure, we are a litigious society. People who are not using that pretty soon are going to be liable because, all of this is being tracked. And to the extent that the hospital that I go, CPMC or Kaiser or what have you, doesn't do best practices, that, it could be problematic. So, thank you. Yes, Chris?
Just to build on that a little bit, this is a great talk. This is super interesting.
Thank you.
And I love the medical application in my class often because I like to talk to students about levels of knowing and about having what we sometimes call adjustable autonomy, right? So in other words, I'm totally comfortable going to the doctor, putting my arm in and having a machine read my blood pressure. And I'm sort of comfortable with it having drawn conclusions from that, like, oh, you have high blood pressure, you should take less salt. I may be even comfortable with robotic assisted surgery, which happens all the time. Like laparoscopic surgery is usually done that way. I'm way less comfortable with diagnostics, and I'm really less comfortable with the wisdom level. Like, what should we do next? So I guess the question I'm kind of leading up to is, what does that look like in the medical field as doctors and clinicians start to have more tools that can do a piece of their job, but the human judgment part still needs to sit with the human, right? How do we manage that interface?
Great question. So I think in healthcare, we're very lucky. The regulator, FDA, created 2 years ago an innovation lab. So similar to the process, and again, I get in trouble, so let me just step back. I'm not a lawyer by training, so just full disclosure. So the good news, they came up, we are all familiar with clinical trials, developing drugs. We know it costs $1 billion to get one of those out there. We know it takes 10 years to do that. But they created a group, the innovation team, that are trying to certify algorithms. So what they do now is you gotta test not as stringent as developing a compound, a drug, but you go through a lot of work to get your algorithm clear. So it's not a startup, couple guys in a garage, which, I've been there many times, saying, oh, I have this one, good, let's go and try to fix Chris. But there is a lot of things in place. And healthcare is a pretty conservative industry, and there's a lot of, because litigation is pretty costly, because, human lives are very costly. So I think we are in a path. There's a lot of things that are happening. And I think the FDA, the main regulator, is stepping in and saying, we want to get part of it. And we see it every day. Every day is an announcement of a new algorithm that got clear to be implemented and deployed. Yes, I don't know. Thank you, great question. So not only electricity, but water. You need a lot of water to cool some of those services. So one of the things in this association that the American Medical Informatics Association, that I'm pretty lucky to be a member of, that we're looking at, or some people are looking at, is can we train algorithms with less data? And again, for some of you who love data, usually we say more data is better. So we all want to train models based on tons of data. And as human beings, we make decisions based on a lot of information. So some of the encouraging news now is a lot of people are stepping back, knowing the impact that every time we do a query, can we train with less data? To the extent that we can train algorithms with less data, the question is, well, hopefully we're going to be able to go there. And there's other thing, there's an exercise that I do in one of my classes, which we divide the group and we say, look, let's assume different clinical workflows, and can you add telehealth to minimize the amount of time that somebody drives 1 hour to the doctor, stays there for 1 hour and come back? Can you quantify that to the extent that we can provide that to health systems so they can say, look, for this, don't drive all the way, and for some reason they can get some currency, if you will, for their impact or less impact to global warming and what have you. All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.